What's up? So if you are a salesperson or you want to get better at sales, this is the video for you. For those of you guys who don't know who I am, my name is Javi Chavez, and for the last 3 years, I have scaled 5 different brands to 7 or 8 figures in revenue, generating tens of millions of dollars for all of our brands here at Pineda Company. I have trained hundreds of salespeople over the last 3 years. Prior to that, I've been in sales 11 years now, so I have a lot of experience across various different industries. The reason why I made this video specifically was earlier today, I was revamping our team sales script, going through our sales training, and I realized that there's a lot of stuff that we do that I think would be valuable for everybody else. So I've created this sales framework. This is the same sales framework that we use through our discovery, our pitch, our close, and this can be applicable to anybody regardless of your industry, B2B, B2C, and I know this is gonna be valuable for you. So again, if you want to scale up or this is your first entry into sales, get your pen and paper out. I think this can be super valuable for you. And if it isn't, let me know in the comments. Thanks guys, let's get into it. So before I get into the training, these are just some core things that salespeople should know, just some overarching thoughts and things that I try to do on every sales call. Number one, understand that your product or service actually solves problems and be sold on the product or service. The biggest mistake that I see with salespeople are they work for companies and they don't believe in the thing that they're selling. If you don't believe in your product and service and that it's actually helping people, quit, find another job. You want to come work for me? We're hiring. Number two, ask for the close a minimum of 4 times. You need to be constantly in there and have several closes ready to go to make sure that you're actually asking and being persistent. I call it polite persistence. Next is tailor your pitch to the prospect. I'm going to talk about this more in our pitch section, but that's super important. Salespeople start yapping about all the different features that their product has, and no one cares. They just want us to have their problem solved. And most importantly, highlight the social proof before they ask for it. It's a lot more organic. Like you should have testimonials on deck, ready to go, and we'll talk about where to put those in this video. In discovery, it's all about active listening. So you need to make sure that you're repeating back what the prospect is saying. And again, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but just want to make it very clear throughout the entire call. If you're on Zoom, it should look like you're taking notes. If you're face-to-face, you should be actively listening, not just look like you're actively listening so that way, one, you can reiterate whatever is important to them. And 2, in the off chance that you don't close your deal, now you have all the notes. I know for me personally as a salesperson and after hiring and training, almost probably hundreds of salespeople at this point, I can honestly say that salespeople are the most disorganized group of people, and it just is what it is. We're good talkers, we're not good note takers. So with that being said, make sure that you are actively listening and taking active notes so that way you can refer back to it when you have your follow-up call or whatever it is. In the objection handling sequence, it's not us versus them. We're both sitting down, we're on the same side of the table, we're both trying to solve problems to reach common ground, reach an agreement, and provide the tools and resources that they need. Let's make that very clear. It's not overcoming objections, it's we're both on the same team, we're overcoming a problem together. And I think that's super important when it comes to just selling and the ethics of selling. And last, make sure that you are just creating urgency. I see so many people go through a presentation, but they don't have anything to actually tie the prospect down. And we're going to talk about in discovery how to ask certain questions to uncover that, but just make sure that whether it be a deadline for them to make a decision, some sort of commitment, some sort of tie down, that's going to be super important. And the last thing before we jump into the whole training is end every call with a commitment. Either hopefully you're getting the sale and we're moving on and we're going to onboard them, we're going to do whatever we do. But if we can't, we need some sort of commitment for a decision, whether that be, hey, they're committing to a call within 48 hours. They're committing to never talking to us again. Because at the end of the day, a maybe is worse than a no. So without further ado, let's jump into it with number one. Number one is you just want to set the tone and establish the call. For the sake of everything that I'm going to talk about, these would be what I consider closing calls. So you've already qualified the prospect to some degree. This is where you're actually going to pitch the prospect, right? So what I always like to do at the very beginning of any sales interaction is set the stage. So What that looks like is just setting expectations around what this call is going to include, the purpose of the call, and confirm that they're actually available. What this looks like is very simple. Hey, John, I appreciate the time that we have today. Looks like we have like 30 minutes set aside. Does that still work for you? The reason for the call is, I just want to learn more about your goals, see where you're at, and then figure out if we can help. Sound fair? Very basic, very straightforward, just setting the tone. And then this also puts you in the driver's seat. One big mistake that I see a lot of salespeople make is they're just a glorified answer taker. They might as well be a chatbot in that situation where they let the prospect run the call. They're just answering questions. The prospect gets the information they need and they hop off the call. What you're doing from step one is setting the tone so that way the prospect knows you are in control, whether that be consciously or subconsciously. What this does, again, and why it works is we're able to build rapport, make it super casual, and it eliminates uncertainty about the call, which I think is the biggest thing, right? When there is, I call it sales anxiety. So when a salesperson just jumps right into a presentation or jumps right into a pitch, the problem is the prospect has no idea how long this is going to take, no idea what they're actually going to be going through, and they can actually get angry or anxious while you're asking questions because they just want to jump right into it. But if you set the stage early on of like why you're on the call, that you are going to be asking questions, you're going to go out and succeed. Number two is discovery. Personally, this should be about 60% of your entire call. Most objections are handled in discovery. My best salespeople and the salespeople that I have worked with over the last 10 years, all of them always have the best discovery, and they diffuse all the objections that they have very early on in the sales process. Step one is understand the why, and I would consider this kind of like an emotional trigger. So what got you interested in our product or service? Why are you on the call today? What are you hoping to achieve by starting XYZ, right? So all we're doing is very simple. Why are you here? Step two, now we have to assess timing. So why now? Meaning, why is now the right time? Because I know for us and for a lot of people online, before they make buying decisions, they've already been researching prior to getting on the call. So why is now the reason why you're actually getting on the phone? How long have you been researching this? Why haven't you done something sooner? So asking those questions early on, so they're already establishing in their mind why they need to move forward on this call. And the other thing too is this already starts the consequence phase line of questioning. Once you understand why now we can ask a follow-up question and dig deeper in what happens if you wait another 6 months, 12 months? What changes or what doesn't change? And you notice how I changed my tone of voice. You want to sincerely be concerned for the prospect, like when they're making these decisions. So, what did change? Why do you feel like now's the right time to get started in XYZ? What happens if you wait 6 months, 12 months, etc., right? So then number three, we just want to figure out where they're at in their current situation, right? So what's your experience with XYZ? Where are you currently at with your problem, goal, etc.? What's been your biggest challenge so far? And most importantly, and I love this question, what have you already tried? What solutions or what things have you been looking into in order to make this problem go away? So the second that they give me the things that they've already tried, or this also works for when they're looking into competitors. When a prospect's looking into a competitor, the very first question that I ask is, okay, with the call that you had, what did you like about the product or service that you're looking into? Then I can start asking, what did you dislike about the product or service? I always like to start positive when I'm asking that question. So what did you like? Instead of starting with what did you dislike, it just lowers sales resistance in my experience because you're starting with a positive. And the other part of this, once you ask that question, in your mind, you're taking mental notes on whether or not your product or service can fulfill on the things that they said. Number 4, determine their budget and their readiness. So this will look different based on whether you're selling direct to consumer or selling business to business. But the question, and no matter what, you still have to understand what their budget is. So, how much capital do you have currently set aside to allocate towards something like this? And the other thing that you can do is, if you already know that your prospect is evaluating other things or they've tried something in the past, the follow-up question is, well, what did you spend on that thing, or what are the other people charging for you? Is that in line with the budget? The big thing with sales, and I was just talking about it with my team upstairs, is think about sales as jujitsu and this framework as just the list of different submissions or list of different things that you can pull out of depending on what the prospect gives you, right? So when you have this checklist and when you know exactly what to go through, now you're able to pull bits and pieces here and there based on when the prospect reveals certain things to you. So an example of this would be, hey, what did you try in the past? What did you like? What didn't you like? And then from there, I would ask, well, how much have you spent on those things previously? What was your budget when you were looking into it? What were they charging? Once I understand those questions, now I can already start to build my financial picture and determine whether or not the prospect is qualified for this situation. A couple other questions that I typically like to ask are, hey, again, how much are you currently spending or willing to invest to solve this problem? And what tools, resources do you currently have and are you currently spending money on to help you succeed? All right, so I'm just getting a full financial picture of where they're at and what their budget is. Really, why this works is, again, you're able to uncover their financial situation, their motivations, financial readiness, and then most importantly, the worst thing that you can do in a sales situation, and my sales guys do it all the time, are they will not financially qualify, and then they pitch somebody who can't even afford the product, and you just wasted 30, 45 an hour with this person when you probably could have just been spending time locking up more deals and talking to more people. So to summarize, this is what I like to call the commitment checklist. So these are the things that you need to iron out in discovery well before you ever move in to your pitch. So to recap, understand the why. Why are you on this call with me right now? Number two, understand why now, the timing behind it. Why is now the time to make a move and improve your situation? Number three, evaluate their current situation. And then number four, budget, resources, etc. So that way we can put together a full picture for the prospect. Once we've checked off all those boxes and right before we transition into the pitch, this is the last question that I love asking, and it's helped me just pull more out of them and also reconfirm. It's what I call a trial close. And I know we haven't pitched anything yet, so that's why this is so important and so valuable, right? So what that looks like is, hey, if we could solve XYZ, whatever problem, pain, situation that they brought up in discovery, now we're going to reiterate it to them. So I'll do this whole thing in practice. Based on what you told me that problem number one was important to you, problem number two is extremely important, and number three are the things that you're really looking for in order for us to solve. Is that reasonable? What else? So I ask, what else? It's an open-ended question. It's not, is there anything else? That's a yes or no question. When I ask what else, it's an open-ended question, and one of two things happen. Either number one, they're going to tell you, no, that's it. We're good. Let's move on. Perfect. We know we're in alignment. Or number two, they're going to uncover some other thing that is going to be important to the pitch, to them, so that way you know you can tie that in to your sales process as you move into it. Then once we confirm there's nothing else, next thing is, okay, so if I'm able to solve XYZ and check off all your boxes and the price made sense, would you be ready to move forward on this call? So that's definitely more of a business to consumer type of close, but it does work in business to business as well, because at least you're able to identify what blockers there are prior to getting all the way to the close, what other decision makers there are, right? So when I ask this question, a few things happen. And again, I'll repeat it. So if I'm able to solve XYZ for you and it makes sense financially, are you ready to move forward on this call? And in a business-to-business scenario, they'll probably say no. I have to get decision maker one, decision maker two. I need to really look at the budget, get the CFO's approval, whatever it is. And then in that situation, you know how this communication is going to end. Either one, you're going to go schedule a meeting that includes all the decision makers, so you only have to pitch once, or you know that you can just really dig deep and build value with your champion, for a business-to-business term, meaning the person that's really going to help move your sale forward within the business. And then on the business-to-consumer side, when you ask this question, very similar things will happen. Either one, yes, and great, let's move into the pitch. Or two, no, I got to get some money together, which you should have already financially qualified, but that might be one. No, I have to talk to my wife. I have to talk to my small business partner, whatever it is. But at least now we know how to position the pitch and whether or not we're going to push for a close on this call or not. So that's helped me close several deals. It's helped my team close a ton, and it really helps out a lot. Next one is positioning or setting the stage and authority. What this looks like and why it's important is this is where you're really starting to position yourself as the expert, the right product, the right service for them as we're moving into the pitch now. So this is where you're going to start pulling out testimonials, wins for your customers, anybody who kind of aligns. And this is where having a good list of testimonials is super important, so you can find one that aligns most closely with your prospect that you're currently talking to. So, hey, actually, your business kind of reminds me of Jim and Company X. This is what we were able to do for them. And then you go in to their testimonial. Or if you don't have that, whatever credibility that you do have, hey, we've been in business for X amount of years. We've helped X amount of clients. We've generated X amount of revenue. We've saved X amount of time. We generated X amount of views, right? Whatever your product or service or situation is, that's what you are now going to be putting into this portion of setting the stage and experience. And then we're also going to highlight your results. This is, hey, what makes us different from Company X, Company Y, Company Z are these things right here. And now we're going to be able to outline it and really start to build trust, differentiate your product or service. So we haven't fully even talked about the deliverables, the real pitch yet. This is all just kind of setting the stage and letting them know that you guys are experts and that you guys are going to be able to help them with XYZ. Next is the most important thing. I know I've said this is a lot of important things here, but this one is it. I cannot harp on this thing enough. Once we actually transition to the pitch, it's what we call a tailored pitch or a tailored product solution for them, right? With our companies, we offer so many different deliverables and so many different features and things that we can do to help people. But it's really easy for my sales team to go deep into the rabbit hole and start listing off all the deliverables and all the things that we do, but that's not true value, right? What I do is now I reach back to discovery, all the things that they said were important to them, and then I just pitch to those things. I don't talk about any other things besides the things that they told me were important to them, right? So I'm going to go through and I'm going to say, hey, based on what you told me, you said X was important, right? We get agreement. Okay, so this is how we solve that problem for you. And then now I'm going to talk about the story of how this can actually solve, right? Facts tell, stories sell. So now you might, if you want to get really crafty with it, you're going to take the testimonial that we talked about in the previous section. We're going to tie that in to our pitch. And hey, this is how we helped them. We helped them because we had service 1, service 2, service 3. And this is how they were able to generate, X amount of revenue or whatever your desired outcome is, right? Because the whole purpose is in discovery, we're building the gap. In the pitch, we're building the bridge of how your product or service takes them from where they're at today to where they will be. You are the bridge. And so you have to position your product and service in that way. And the way you do that is through telling a story, doing very good discovery, and then most importantly, tailoring your pitch to their needs, wants, and then don't say anything else. What I tell my salespeople to do is once they've tailored it, yeah, you can throw in 1 or 2 sentences at the end. Hey, by the way, we also offer XYZ. It's a ton of extra value, but I know it's not super important to you, but I just want to let you know that we have it. Again, this ties the solution back into like their exact needs, builds buy-in, and then, it allows you to start trial closing, right? So once we start offering some of these deliverables, the next thing that we're gonna do after every one of these things, hey, is that valuable to you? Does that align with what you told me you were looking for? Are we on the same page? You're gonna start asking these trial close questions as you're going through your pitch, right? So what that allows you to do is just to get some feedback because you're gonna be talking a lot during this period, right? If the discovery is 60%, this is like 20 to 30%, but it's all you speaking, right? You should keep it concise and short, but you have to get some feedback because especially in this day and age when a lot of you are conducting Zoom calls, you're very rarely face-to-face these days. You're not only competing with whether or not they're gonna buy, you're competing with their Slack notifications, you're competing with text messages, Instagram, like you need to make sure that the prospect is still paying attention to you while you're going through your pitch because it's very easy for them to tune out because you're just yapping, right? So let's make sure that we have some feedback and these trial closes are super important. So again, what that looks like is, hey, does this align with what you told me earlier? Is this what you feel like would help solve your problem? And then my favorite trial close before moving into the transition of the close, hey, based on everything I told you, is there anything that's missing that you'd like to see or that I haven't covered yet? Right? This is Chris Voss, always start with no. That's kind of where I got this concept from, and it's always worked very, very well. Because again, before I transition from pitch to close, there's a couple questions that I ask, and this is one of them. So again, what that looks like is, hey, based on everything I covered, is there anything that's missing or that you'd want to see from our product or service that I haven't covered yet? What that allows you to do is, again, 1 of 2 things. Either they say yes, and then they tell you what they wanted, and then you can articulate how your product or service can fulfill that, or why it's not actually important. And you got to explain away their objection and tell them, hey, you actually don't need this because of XYZ, because my product or service solves your problem, right? So you figure that out before you talk about price. And then number 2, they say, no, we're all good. This makes sense. And you're like, perfect. The next question that I like to ask is a pretty hard trial close. And it sounds like, hey, money aside, would you move forward on this call if it makes sense financially? Right? And then again, 1 of 2 things happen. Well, they say, well, no, right? And then I'm like, okay, well, what else would you need to see before we move up and start talking about price? Or they say, well, we need to talk about the price. I don't know. I'm like, okay, no worries. We'll talk about price now. I just want to confirm that there's nothing else that you need to see from the product. See how I acknowledge their objection? We'll talk about objection handling later, but I acknowledged their objection, and then I still returned it to them and told them why I'm doing something. You want to explain it away, right? Because the big challenge that a lot of salespeople run into are they make it this combative thing, and then the sales resistance is so high. But if I give them a question that they kind of respond combatively to, I say, so in this situation, they're like, well, I got to see the price. Yeah, totally understand, acknowledge. Hey, the reason why I'm asking this question is just because I want to be clear that there's nothing else that you would want to see from the product before we start talking about everything else. So is there anything that's missing that you'd want to see? And then again, I get those 1 of 2 answers. And then if they say no, we're going to move on. We're going to jump right into now negotiating on price. All right, so next, we're going to talk about price. So pricing ranges, and how you're going to deliver it is going to range based on, the level of dollar amount and kind of contracts and things that your company is going to need. But just a few general rules of thumb that I personally believe in. I don't believe really in discounting. I try to do it as little as possible. What I try to do instead is value add. So I stack on more things that, they will need that are useful, but that I can remove assuming the price is too high. In one of my previous sales roles, one of the best things that I ever did was, we were selling packages of lessons, and our minimum was 5, but I would always start the negotiation with 10. And then that way I can always, it's an anchor. I would start high and then drop it low. Same thing when we're buying real estate upstairs. One of the things that we do, always have two different options. We have what it would look like if, you were to list it and what a cash offer looks like. It's a lot more attractive when they hear the cash offer that's, 70% of the home's value. They get anchored, and then they're more willing to take the higher listing price, right? Same concept across the board. But if you can, and you have several products or services, I would stack them on or adding some sort of setup fee. So that way, when you deliver the price, it starts high, you listen, you wait, and then we start negotiating from there, if that makes sense. So what does this look like in practice? So I'll use our own products or services as an example, right? So what we sell education. We also generate leads. We have a CRM, deal finding software, all different things. And a lot of it is packaged into like the service, but the leads are extra. So I love bundling in extra packs of our leads. We sell them in packs of 50. So I always tell my team to bundle those in from the jump for two reasons. Number one, it anchors people high, just like we talked about. And number two, the most important thing is the prospect is actually going to get genuine value from getting more leads, and they have a higher chance of success. So the ideal situation is you're bundling things that they actually need. I want to make sure that that's very clear. We want to be ethical salespeople here, right? Salespeople get a bad enough rep as it is, so we want to make sure that we're ethical and we're only bundling things that people actually need, want, and will use. So what it looks like in practice is our all-star program. It's $2,500 a month. They're going to get some leads, they're going to get all kinds of stuff. I always have them start with an extra $1,000 of our leads, right? So when you're delivering price, cool. So you told me like everything aligns. We know the product makes sense. Based on everything you told me, I think our all-star program is going to make the most sense. What that looks like is it's $2,500 a month. You're going to get everything that we talked about in terms of the coaching, the leads, etc. I also recommend getting another 50 leads because you're going to blow through the leads that you have pretty quickly, and it's just going to give you a higher chance of success and getting your first deal. So what that looks like to get started is $3,500 a month, no contract, no commitment. Does that sound reasonable? And then again, now we're negotiating on price, and this is kind of the fun part. And once we start getting into objections, the overarching theme with overcoming any objection is understanding if it's truly an objection or a problem or just a smokescreen. Because once money's involved, human nature is just so interesting, and people are going to lie, people are going to get squirmy, and it's up to you to, number one, remain calm and be able to overcome these objections and sift through the smokescreens. Ideally, your objection handling was done in discovery. You've already handled a lot of this stuff, and you're able to recall on that. But let's jump into it. Let's just do a few basic price objections, etc. Right? I say it's $3,500. Oh, that's too much. The next thing that you're going to say is, okay, when you say it's too much, is it like the upfront commitment, or do you feel like it's just not worth that? Right? What I'm trying to undo and what I'm trying to uncover is it a product problem or is it a price problem? Because again, either they are, for whatever reason, even though I've done my trial closes, I've confirmed that it's not the product, now that might actually come up. They're like, hey, do you just feel like it's not worth $3,500, the coaching, or do you just feel like that's too much money? What I'm trying to figure out is what to negotiate on. The biggest mistake that salespeople make when they're overcoming objections is they jump straight to price. They say, oh, it's too much money. Hey, I can't afford that. Before actually figuring out if that's a true objection, salespeople will jump all over that. Okay, I'll just remove it. I'll give you a discount, etc., hoping to get the deal. And then price wasn't even the objection. So they drop their discount, they show their cards, and the prospect probably still isn't even sold. So the better idea is to sit back when they say, oh, that's too much money. Okay, totally understand, makes sense. Now, when you say it's too much money, is it more so like it's too much money for what I'm offering you, or you just truly can't afford it, right? And so again, what I'm trying to lock in is identify whether it's the product or the price. And that's how all of these objections are going to come up. So let's talk about another objection that everybody's going to get. It's the wife objection or the husband objection, or like the business partner objection. Whatever it is, there's a third party that's randomly appeared that now we have to overcome and figure out. Just like the previous objection, my biggest goal is to understand, is this a smokescreen or is this a legitimate challenge or problem that we need to solve? So how we do that is, hey, totally understand that you have to talk to your partner. Want to make sure that everybody's in alignment. Now, based on everything that I told you, is there anything that you feel like your partner wouldn't like in terms of like the product, everything that we've offered, the service, or like the price? The purpose of this question is, again, to get to the root of it. Now, one of two things happen. You're like, no, we're in alignment. They'll probably just have to, they just got to see it. Okay, and again, hopefully we figure that out in discovery, whether or not there's other decision makers and whatever, right? But if we didn't, and now this is coming up, one of two things happen. One, they say, no, they just got to see it. Okay, let's schedule a follow-up, and then I'm still going to go for another close after we schedule the follow-up, by the way. But if they say, well, she'd probably say it's expensive or whatever, right? Now we know it's a price objection. Now I can jump right back into negotiating. Hey, okay, so totally understand. Like, is there a price point that you think she would move forward at? Right? Basically what I'm doing here is I know that it's actually them who have the objection. So now we're going to start negotiating on the price. Or, yeah, she might not think that this is going to work. It's missing XYZ, whatever. Now we know it's a price objection or a product objection, and now we have to go back to selling. Now, this is another big point and just the way I personally look at sales. Once we have moved from the discovery to the pitch to now the close, the only thing we should be talking about once we get to the close is money. We should only be figuring out money, terms, delivery, those types of things. It's just logistics at that point. Because a big mistake that salespeople make is they get a price objection and they go jump back into selling. They try to start selling and talking about features and tools when once we start talking about delivery, payment terms, discounts, bundling, any of those items, just talk about the money. Don't jump into selling unless they start bringing up, oh, well, I don't know if the product's going to work for me, etc. Then we got to jump back into selling and make our way back into the close. So this is the framework that we've created to overcome all objections. It's called AARR. Number one, acknowledge the objection. Make them feel heard. The biggest mistake that salespeople make is they hear an objection, they jump right on it, or they ignore it altogether and try to move on in the sales process. And that's super frustrating as a prospect. So number one, acknowledge their objection. So, hey, I hear you, totally understand, the price might be a little high. Next is ask a clarifying question. So when you ask this question, hey, so just to be clear, is it more so like the pricing just doesn't make sense because of the upfront payment or the monthly? Hey, is it just that you don't really feel like the product's going to work for you, right? So we're asking a clarifying question to really get to the root of it. One of the mistakes that salespeople make is they hear an objection, they jump right all over it without getting the full picture. Be patient, sit back, and know that you're an expert, you're a closer. So when you know the objection is going to come, you're going to acknowledge, you're going to ask a clarifying question. Third is reframe the conversation. So this is where I'm going to just offer a solution for whatever their situation is. So, hey, if the price is a little too high, hey, like what would happen if I removed this? Or is there a price point that you would need to be at to move forward today? And the last R is reclose softly. I even did it in that last little presentation without really thinking about it. So, hey, if I'm able to solve this, would you move forward with me on this call? If I'm able to solve this, are we ready to go? Right? So again, AARR. And a couple key points with objection handling is just focus on understanding, not this back and forth that we're typically known for as salespeople. And then it just reframes their concerns for them to see the bigger picture of the product, the service. And then again, it gets them back to bridging that gap that we were talking about earlier.